Welcome to part 2 of my interview with Elizabeth Marshall, Bette Marshall, my mom. A very special time to sit down and have a chat with her and listen to her life and her journey. Quite a remarkable story, if I say so myself, having lived through part of it. And I'm very proud of my mom for everything that she's accomplished and that very difficult web that we all have to weave in our lives. So thank you. If you've missed part 1, please do go and watch it. It'll fill you in on the beginnings of her life, a single mom living in New York City with a kid in tow, how she survived on her own, and then how life suddenly changed. Elizabeth Marshall is a photographer. She was an actress. She was a single mom with a kid in tow who went through a divorce, remarried, and created quite a remarkable career. And I'm also proud to say, that's my mom. I sat down with her in Florida not too long ago, and I'd like to share a very personal conversation with you, a very special time to sit down with my mom and learn a little bit about her journey. And things are not always what they seem to be. So Mom, thank you for being part of Gate 24 Unscripted Journeys. Everyone, I hope you enjoy. What was it inside you that kept you going?
Well, along the way, at one point, I replaced the female lead in a classic Spanish play, La Vida es Sueño, Life is a Dream by Calderón de la Barca.
Okay.
I had 3 days to learn 5 acts, 5 full acts in classic verse.
Oh, wow.
So you couldn't just improvise.
Right.
And I just remember morning, noon, and night writing each line over and over and over.
So the commitment.
So I did do a performance, but the closing notice for the play went up the same time.
Oh.
So I never got to have a run in it, but I did do a performance.
Okay.
Opposite a very great actor at the time named Michael Higgins. So that was one theater opportunity. Then eventually, I was very nervous through a lot of this time. I'd be afraid of running out of money.
Right, so I'm saying, what was it that kept you when you didn't get the audition and you were hoping you would get there? Even though you did get them eventually, I want to know how you made it through.
I guess I had enough confidence in my ability.
Okay.
And had enough positive reactions, even doing commercials.
So you could just say this one didn't work. You could just roll it off and keep going.
And so then, in the early spring of 1965, I met an actor I knew told me about auditions going on to replace the ingenue lead in a hit Broadway comedy called Never Too Late.
Right, of course.
And it was a fluke. It was just good luck that I happened to hear about it and go to that audition.
Right.
And the production stage manager, who eventually became a friend, Wally Peterson, who you may even remember.
Of course I remember Wally, yeah.
And I did an audition, and I got a call back for that same afternoon.
Right.
But it was about this girl a woman, Maureen O'Sullivan.
Who was the mother?
Who was a mother who found out, like, she's 50 years old, like, she's pregnant. She's going to
have a baby. Right.
And all the housework falls to me.
And you and your husband, played by Richard Mulligan, you were trying to have a baby, but you weren't having a lot of success, if I remember that. It was sort of the counter.
I don't remember that part. I think what happened was I decided to try to get pregnant.
Right.
In order to avoid all the housework, which was falling to me to do.
Okay, that is a comedy.
Right.
So she's having the baby.
And I've got a bunch of photos from that. And
right.
Arthur Godfrey, old TV personality.
Yes.
Played the father.
Right. So Arthur Godfrey, Maureen O'Sullivan, Richard Mulligan is quite a cast, and you,
And we replaced the Broadway company.
Sure. I think Paul Ford was in the original,
Yes, he was. And Maureen O'Sullivan was in it originally.
Right.
She left for a few months.
And it was a very famous director, too, George Abbott.
Now, the stage manager, because I was replacing somebody, directed my production of it. That was
at that point in time.
But I was also taking acting classes at this point with Lee Strasberg.
The Lee Strasberg.
Right.
Right.
And I remember going to him after rehearsal where they would say, all right, you walk from here to here, you count to 3 and say this line, and you'll get a laugh.
Right.
And I went back to Lee after I was learning motivation.
Right.
Right. And I told him, I said, didn't know what to do. They're just telling me to do this. He says, darling, do what the director tells you.
Good advice.
That was it.
Right. I remember you telling me, because you would say, like, do here, count to 3 and say your line. You're like, how can I just count to 3 and say my line? That's a great story.
And so when we did it, I remember experimenting a little bit with the timing. There's one scene where I storm upstairs, the fake stage stairs.
Right.
And I would vary my timing a fraction. And it didn't get the laugh.
Interesting.
Then I would go back and the next night and do it with the
way you were supposed to have done it.
And it got the laugh.
It got the laugh.
And in fact, it got exit applause sometimes.
Interesting. So you were really learning your craft as well as building a career at that point. And I've got a joke, because for my friends, I always joke on my bio, my early bio, that's when I made my Broadway debut.
Yes, it was.
Because they didn't have daycare quite the same as they have today. So you brought me to
a rehearsal.
A rehearsal. And I remember that Arthur Godfrey was doing a scene with you all in the living room set, and there's a door that's the front door, and he kept saying, "Come in, Mr. Mayor." And he opens the door, but the mayor wasn't there. No one was coming in.
Because we were just rehearsing.
You're just rehearsing. But I thought, well, oh my gosh, they don't have the mayor. They need some help. So next time, right, he said, "Come in, Mr. Mayor." I stood there. I opened the door, and I waved at everybody, and I just walked across the stage and went back to, it was magic to be on the set, because you'd see this dining room and a stairwell, and then it was plywood. It's like, it was magic. And I just remember this really mean old stage manager grabbing me by the waist as my fingers were clawing the wall, trying and screaming, "I want my mother!" And I don't think you ever brought me back to rehearsal.
But it showed your interest in theater right from the get-go.
Interest in theater. I guess. So you married Paul Marshall. Your second marriage at this particular point in time,
right.
Who was a music...
It was a blind date.
A blind date, okay.
Friends of his family knew friends of my family.
Right.
So first they fixed me up with some young accountant who was a very boring, sweet but boring guy.
Right.
Then they brought out what they called the big guns.
The
They
big
introduced
guns.
me to Paul Marshall, who
Right.
at that point was a very successful attorney in entertainment law.
Right. Copyright law,
Is
music,
it
and... That's
copyright law.
Yeah.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
The rest, they say, is history. And you guys were married for many, many years.
46 years.
46 years. And it was an incredible journey, and it had its challenges.
I had 2 more children,
Right.
so you had a younger brother and
My
sister.
brother Matt and my sister Al. And I want to fast forward a little bit, because I think people might find some inspiration in just the journey and hearing that, again, what someone else goes through. It seems like it's so easy and it looks so right, but we're all struggling. And that's part of why I'm doing this podcast.
Well, there was always the fear that I wouldn't know what's next.
Which is what life is. We don't. But it's how do we deal with that? How do you, like you said, you had confidence in yourself because other people had given you that. Contrary, it wasn't always easy. It wasn't like everybody said that. You had parents and relatives that were telling you, no, you do it this way. You're not supposed to do it a certain way. And yet you still went forward.
Well, especially at that time, women still didn't have a lot of options. I mean, you could be a secretary or a nurse.
Right. Right. Not that there's anything wrong with being a secretary or a nurse.
No, there isn't. But if that was your only option, no one ever thought you could be a lawyer or a doctor.
Right, to go on and build a career. Very different times. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I want to fast forward a little bit, because now, I mean, you and I are closer to age now than we were back then. I mean, it's the same, obviously, number of years, but you were young when you had me, so you could have been a big sister on one level.
We grew up together.
We kind of did in our own way, and
when I was getting my divorce and we stayed with my parents in Chicago for a year,
right,
my mother treated us both like 2 children,
2 kids,
which annoyed me a lot.
Well, yeah, well, you were, but that was, again, it's struggling for our independence. When people don't believe in us or they need their degree of control, how do we find
but
that.
now when I see people 22, I think of them as so young.
How did you
and
do
I think
it?
here I was already a mother with a child and going into theater in New York.
Right. After you married Paul Marshall, though, your career switched. Instead of being an actress, you discovered photography. And that was something very special to you, and that became a major, major part of the rest of your career.
Well, the fact was my father and my older brother were both filmmakers.
Right.
So I grew up around film,
Right.
but I only wanted to act. And I remember at one point my father saying, didn't I want to learn how to make film?
Interesting. And by the way, that's Jack H. Lieb. You mentioned Jack Lieb before. That's Jack H. Lieb, who was the newsreel cameraman who landed on the beaches of Normandy, took those rare color pictures that I'm very proud of, that I've shared on my blog already.
Which is another whole story.
Which is another whole story in itself. So that's your father, my grandfather. So he said, why didn't you do the photography? And
because I just wanted to be an actress, but looking back at it, I thought if I'd learned to be a filmmaker, then there were very few women filmmakers.
Interesting.
And I might have had a whole interesting, different career.
Had you gone that way?
And then one day, I took your little brother Matthew. I had a friend down the street.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it was Margot Astrakhan,
Mm-hmm.
who was a neighbor and friend.
Yes.
And we had two little boys about the same age, and I brought Matthew over to her house for a play date with her son. And Matthew was sitting in a hallway in a little fire engine car,
Okay.
drive-it-yourself little car, and she took a picture of him in the hallway.
Right.
And I said, there's not much light here.
Mm-hmm.
How can you take a picture?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I use fast film.
Hmm.
And I said, what's that? And that was the beginning of a whole new life.
A whole new life. And fast film is more sensitive film, right?
Yes, you can shoot with lower light.
And it's more sensitive. So that started a whole new career. And from that, you wrote a book. You went forward with these, and you took a lot of amazing photographs of a lot of amazing people that have carried you with some really remarkable life history.
I never saw myself until recently when I managed to break a couple things as being an old lady. I was just me.
Right.
And circumstances in life changed, of course.
Right.
Then after 46 years and three children, we moved from New York to Florida for a while because he'd had a lot of health issues.
Right.
And bypass surgery and whatever, and I managed to convince him to move to Florida with me because my parents had lived in Florida.
Right, warmer weather, nicer weather.
And I knew the area.
Right.
So...
which is where we are, where we're filming now.
Which is where we are, but now he passed away, unfortunately, in 2012.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it was the first time in my whole life I'd ever lived by myself.
Mm.
I'd always gone from my parents' house
Right.
to being a parent, to having a child to take care of,
Right.
to having Paul to take care of.
Right.
And all of a sudden I could get up when I wanted to, I could see who I wanted to, I could watch what I wanted to on television.
Right.
It was like discovering a whole new
That's exciting, but it's
world
you think
of
it'd
being independent.
Right. You'd think it would be frightening, and I guess there was perhaps a certain degree.
Well, there is too, of course. And I didn't have family nearby. Fortunately, you were able to fly easily to come visit me fairly often.
Right.
Matthew and Allison were both in California.
Right.
So, but I started to make friends here.
Sure, of course.
And just from neighbors.
You build a whole new life and things. But that takes a lot to see that through, and some people would give in to that. And
some people have a harder time doing it, but I don't know. I guess it didn't occur to me not to deal with it, not to
right. Do you think
keep going?
So going back to those earlier years where you knew you just had to do it, I mean, it might seem an obvious question, but maybe it isn't. Do you feel that the strength that you found in yourself back then has helped you through your entire life, or do you see it as just an inevitability, or how would you tie that together if you can?
I never thought about it. I mean, I just lived my life.
Just did it.
just did it. And yeah, I mean, there's a time when we traveled around the world, we did lots of things, and I've never been so materialistic that I only could live like I lived when I was married to a successful lawyer.
Right. Which is very lucky too that happened.
Maybe the same resourcefulness that helped me go to New York with you as a kid, was still a spirit
inside you,
inside me. But it's not something I think about or dwell on. I just get up in the morning and see, what am I doing today?
What am I doing today? Which is perhaps maybe the healthiest.
Then, the fact that I had earlier taken pictures of Whitney Houston when I was just sort of getting started as a photographer was a chapter in this memoir I started working on. I joined a writing group.
Okay.
And it gave me motivation because every week I'd have to bring another chapter for the class to read and talk about.
Okay.
So I still have a couple hundred pages of a
You're
memoir.
working on, right.
But there's sections of it that have been published.
Bit by bit.
The time about our life with Bobby Fischer, the chess player, which is a story of its own.
So there are all these chapters,
So there are all these chapters, and someone from a chess magazine told me about a small publisher in New York that might be interested in my memoir.
Okay.
And he talked to them. They said yes, they would look at it. So I sent them the memoir. They came back and said, we like your writing, but we were knocked out by the fact that you photographed Whitney Houston when she was young.
Right.
And for me, it was another chapter. She was like 8 pages in the memoir.
Right. But she was a pretty big name on top of some of the other names, but Whitney Houston was a very big name.
But by then I'd photographed, and by these last few years I'd photographed a lot of people with big names.
Right.
One thing for another, sometimes with assignments, whatever.
Right. And a lot of your images are with Getty Images and things.
And by then my work was being published around the world.
Right.
Starting with the Jamaican elections of 1980. And I knew people in Jamaica and ended up covering the election as a photojournalist.
So you had this entirely separate career from acting, but I'm sure that there's got to be a certain level of that training that allowed you to live in the moment, as they say, as Lee Strasberg was talking about.
Well, it's funny. The couple of times I missed acting was when I had a great actor in front of me. Jason Robards was one.
Right.
I'd always admired. He was a major actor in theater before.
Sure, of course.
And the other was James Earl Jones, who I photographed for New York for a publication.
Right.
And those were the only times I wondered what it would feel like to act with someone that good.
Yeah.
But I was able to establish somehow a rapport with the people I photographed.
Right.
And maybe it was part of my acting background of that I could make something real.
Right.
And I really enjoyed portraiture because I could get these people behaving in a real natural way. So they posed.
Right, you're like you're doing a scene, like you said, as if you were doing a scene together as actors.
So the publisher in New York, who saw my memoir, said, we were knocked out by the fact that you photographed Whitney Houston.
Right.
Would you be interested in doing a book with your pictures and stories of Whitney Houston?
Right.
Now, it was only 7 pages, but they talked about... I forgot an actress who had played Marilyn Monroe in a movie.
Right.
And how somehow she'd never met Marilyn Monroe, but somehow it became a big thing about Marilyn Monroe. So they sent their editor down to Florida, who was also one of the partners of the publishing company, to look at my pictures and talk to me.
Yeah.
And he helped structure it by saying, how many different photo shoots did you do of Whitney?
Yeah.
So I had a box of film in a closet.
Right.
And I pulled it out, and I'm looking through the pictures, and eventually I said, wow, looks like I did 11 different photo shoots of her. So they said, well, instead of chapter 1, chapter 2, why don't we organize it by session 1, session 2?
And I was there for a number of them as your
And
photo
you were
assistant.
there.
Yes.
That's right. You were in film school, and you would
I
help
was
me
carrying the equipment, setting up lights, and hanging out with Whitney and talking about houses and theater and things before she was famous.
And Whitney was talking about what kind of house she would have when she was a star.
Yeah, right.
Not if she was a star, but when she was a star.
and for people watching, this was pre-fame. This was before Whitney actually had the record deal.
She was 19, just turned 19.
Yeah, this was during the auditions.
Just out of high school.
Right.
And she hadn't been signed by any major label yet.
Right. So it was a really amazing, rare opportunity, but you also made it happen. You followed through.
Yeah, so we went to see her perform. Her mother, Cissy Houston, was a well-known singer in her own right.
She sung for her own. She was with Elvis Presley.
She actually asked my husband, Paul,
right, who's in the music business, to come and hear her. She's going to introduce her daughter, and maybe he could introduce her to some record labels. To help get the career going.
So we both went to see the show, Sissy's show, in a nightclub in New York.
Right.
And then after about her third song, she said, now one of my backup singers is going to sing a song.
Right.
She just introduced Whitney. She didn't say it was her daughter. It was one of her backup singers. And this beautiful young girl steps forward and starts to sing. And we hear, like 2 lines of the song, and we just look at each other and say, wow, that's some voice.
And your pictures, a lot of those pictures, what I remember is that this was before the book, is that after, and the pictures were great, but they were sort of pre-Whitney, and people were very interested in the successful Whitney, the movie star Whitney, the mega star Whitney. But that it wasn't really, in my memory, until Whitney had passed, sadly, that a lot of these pictures of the early days suddenly resurfaced, because I guess there was an interest more at that time.
There was an earlier time when she was interviewed by, famous interview when she said crack is whack.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the name.
It was a TV interview with a very famous interviewer. And the person who had done makeup for some of my photo shoots also did her makeup. So she told her about my Whitney pictures, and now Whitney was still very much alive.
Right.
And so in that interview, they used a number of
that started it.
Pictures of Whitney.
Right, but I remember...
Which, of course, I was paid for the music.
Sure.
But that first got my
early
Whitney pictures, even though...
They didn't know they existed. Nobody really knew these existed for many years.
So one thing led to another, and I did the book only after I was over 80 years old.
That's incredible in itself, that with a career like that you start off as an actress, you become a photographer, and then not even until you reach your 80s do you write a book that hits that level, and then you're going to say what happened next.
And then they filmed a documentary about me and showing my pictures of Whitney.
Right.
And that is now on TV.
On Stars
STARZ.
Right.
So to have all this happen in my 80s was like a renewed life.
Yeah.
So it's motivated me and kept me going and involved. And
which is incredible, because a lot of people, you never know if you even make it to your 80s, but to believe that you can have a whole new career. There is hope in darkness. There is hope. There is light when you don't know where things are going to go.
I had no idea that in my 80s, suddenly People magazine would write about me and my Whitney pictures.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It gave me something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key now, is not every now and then I think about my age, and you do think about how long will you live, but finding day-to-day things to look forward to, even if it's just having a date to meet a friend out for lunch or whatever, to keep in touch with people, is something I try to do, not always successfly.
It's overwhelming for anybody. Yeah.
I have my down days.
Sure.
When, and
but that is...
On the other hand, I've got my son Bob and my son Matt.
You got family, and you've got people who love you, and always want to make sure are there, and we all look after each other. And But it seems like a lot of people, I think it's helpful for other people to hear that. And that's been my message. I mean, everybody knows I talk about my heart attack and so forth and getting a second chance, but it is, to me, about every day, make every day matter, because, that's what we know we have right now. And to hear about other people's stories, it is an inspiration. It gives me hope that when I get older, like, sometimes you feel like I may not make it to 60, and then suddenly I'm 60, and then I won't make it to 70, I won't make it to 80, and here we are. I'd like to wrap this up for now and just say, Mom, thank you. I couldn't do a blog and not have my mother in the blog, and I think this is really a beautiful story.
And it's fun to be able to do it with my son.
Thank you. Well, I mean, you've obviously influenced me.
And I'm so impressed by his many talents, I'll tell you.
Well, it's been a journey to coin the whole name of this podcast, but it is about taking every day by day, and enjoying life, finding the things that you love, that inspire you, that turn you on. I mean, the work.
And there's days when you're lonely and you don't know what you're going to do next too.
Yeah,
it's not all hallelujah.
Right, and as I've said online elsewhere, I'll say it again here, is that, on Facebook or Instagram or any of these social media places, we generally tend to post just the happy, the great successes, and people don't air their dirty laundry online. Some people might, but for the most part, it's look how wonderful life is, and people look at that, and I think a lot of people might find that very challenging, and the fact is, we all have those highs and lows, and who are the people in our lives that we can think of that gave us a supportive word, that, like that director, that said something to you that mattered?
Right, that said, you're pretty good at this.
And you can...
a short word, which led me to think there may be more to look forward to or to do in my life.
And my point is, we all can do that. We can all do that with everybody else. We can extend ourselves to give somebody else that leg up, to say that word of kindness, that bit of encouragement to help others, and pass on that, if you want to call it a gift.
If there's any inspiration to be found, it's that a lot of people, as they're turning 50, think they're getting old. And I started a whole new career. I was almost 50 when I became a photographer.
It all started then, yeah.
So it was like a whole second career and second life.
Right. Yeah, it is, and to pass on that sense of inspiration to others. Well, thank you for sitting down with me. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. It wasn't too stressful.
No, not at all. It was more fun than I thought it would be.
Which is the whole point. It's actually life is more fun than you thought it would be. I love you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you so much to my mom for joining me for this conversation, and thank you to all of you for joining us as well. If you have enjoyed this, please do click the subscribe button, and also there's a Buy Me a Coffee link if you'd like to become an early sponsor. And join me for the next episode of Gate 24, Life Now Boarding, Unscripted Journeys. I'm Robert Neal Marshall.